Good morning, my dear children. Welcome to today's virtual session of 9th Standard History. Let us begin today's session with a quote. You can't reach your full potential until you learn to live your life in the present. Children, we have discussed much time that it is very important to live in present to enjoy life and get its full potential, because when we remain worried about the past or future, then we waste a lot of time and energy from the present, which we are never going to get back. Therefore, we never use our full potential. Children, in the last virtual session of 9th Standard History, I introduced the topic economic development. Mainly in this topic, we are going to study India's economic policy, that includes a study of mixed economy, 5-year plans and their successes and failures, nationalization of banks, 20-point program, mill workers strike, and especially the new economic policy of 1991. Children, I told you about mixed economy. Then I discussed about the importance of 5-year plans. What were the goals of the economic planning of India? And then I discussed in detail about the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth and ninth 5-year plans. Now today I would like to continue the topic from nationalization of banks. During the tenure of Prime Ministers Pandit Nehru and Lal Bahadur Shastri, banking was a monopoly of the private sector. These banks presented different industrial groups. The directors of these banks were working towards developing industrial sector and increasing its profits. In order to stop this, the government nationalized the Imperial Bank in 1955 and it got converted into State Bank of India. This bank opened several branches all over the country in a short while and played a major role in development. So children, nationalization of banks was essential to cover the deficits if they occurred while implementing different schemes. The profits of these banks would come to the government once they were nationalized. The policy of developing small industries and pharmaceutical industries had to be implemented. Lal Bahadur Shastri undertook the Green Revolution in order to overcome food shortages and droughts. Congress Forum for Social Action, a group in the Congress Party inspired by socialist ideas, demanded nationalization of commercial banks. They were supported by the Communist Party. To establish socialist pattern of society, 14 major commercial banks were nationalized by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi on 19th July 1969. Six more banks were nationalized in 1980. So, children, you have come to know that the government nationalized the Imperial Bank in 1955 and it got converted into State Bank of India. Acha, here I want to tell you what is nationalization. Because here you have come to know about nationalization of banks. So it should be very much clear to you that what is nationalization. Nationalization is the process of changing ownership of private asset, its production tools and distribution by bringing it under the ownership of government. After independence, most of the banks were owned by private entrepreneurs. In 1969, 14 banks were nationalized, bringing them directly under government control. Therefore, the profits earned by the banks flowed into government treasury and the losses were compensated by the exchequer. So, children, what is nationalization? That nationalization is a process of changing ownership of private assets, its production and distribution by bringing it under the ownership of government. India had adopted a mixed economy after independence. Nationalization of banks was essential to cover the deficit if they occurred while implementing different schemes. Also, the profit of these banks would came into the government treasury once they were nationalized. Along with this, the policy of developing small industries and pharmaceutical industries had to be implemented. Lal Bahadur Shastri undertook the experiment of Green Revolution in order to overcome food shortages and drought. During the tenure of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, Congress Forum for Socialist Action, a group in the Congress Party inspired by socialist ideas, made a demand for nationalization of commercial banks. Even the Communist Party supported this demand. So, children, here you have come to know about the nationalization of banks. Now, I am going to discuss about the 20-point program. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi announced the 20-point program on 1st July 1975 and resolved to make efforts towards rapidly becoming a developed nation. The main provisions of the 20-point program are as follows: land selling for cities and agricultural land, equal division of wealth, minimum wages for workers, increase in water conservation schemes, workers' participation in industry, national training scheme, freeing bonded labor, prevention of tax evasion, economic crimes and smuggling, regulation of prices of basic necessities, improvements in the public distribution system, improvement in the textile industry by developing handloom sector, waiving loans for weaker sections, housing, communication facilities, making educational equipment available to schools. So, children, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi announced the 20-point program on 1st July 1975. She expressed the resolve of becoming a developed nation. The main provision of the 20-point programs were: first one, land selling for cities and agricultural land. It was very important. Then, equal division of wealth. There should be no discrimination. Minimum wages for workers. Increase in water conservation because it was very necessary. Water is very important in our life. National training scheme, freeing bonded labor, prevention of tax evasion, economic crimes and smuggling, regulation of prices of basic necessities, improvements in the public distribution system, improvement in the textile industry by developing handloom sector, waiving loans for weaker sections, housing, communication facilities, making educational equipment available to schools. Children, all these were the main provisions of 20-point program, and that was implemented by Pandit sorry by Mrs. Gandhi on 1st July 1975, and her intention was to resolve of becoming a developed nation. So here you have come to know about the nationalization of banks. Nationalization of banks, mainly it was essential to cover the deficit if it was occurred while implementing different schemes, and the profits of these banks would come to the government once they were nationalized. Then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi nationalized 14 banks on 19th July 1969. Then the background of nationalization, it was also discussed, and then I have discussed about the 20-point program, and mainly it was implemented uh, towards rapidly becoming a developed nation, and it was implemented by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi.